Hey, how is it going, everyone? Thank you for joining us for Developer Day 2021. Hopefully you enjoyed the content that we've prepared, all those talks. Interesting to hear developers share all their experiences about building on Forge, hearing about what's coming on Forge, what we've shipped. And now we have a group of panelists here to answer all of the questions that you've been asking for the past couple of hours about Forge. And I will let them introduce themselves because we have very awesome, smart people here. And so I will ask each person to introduce themselves, say their name and what team they work on, and how long they've been at Atlassian. And also, we'll do the popcorn where we hand it off. So I'll hand it off to Dan first.
Awesome. Thanks, Bentley. Hey, everyone. My name is Dan. I'm a engineering manager here on Forge, an ecosystem platform. I've been with Atlassian coming up on 2 years, and I am leading up the developer loop team. So what our team's responsible for is, we build the tools that developers interact with in Forge. So things like the Forge CLI, the Forge runtime. We build custom UI and UI kit. We essentially build those tools and package them up for external developers. I'll popcorn over to Michael.
Hey, my name is Michael Oates. I'm a principal engineer working on Forge. I've been at Atlassian now, I think I started about 7 years ago now. So on Forge, I work across a bunch of different teams depending upon different initiatives we've got, and had the opportunity to work on some pretty interesting projects. So I'll pop on over to James.
Hi everyone, how are you going? I'm James. I've been a developer at Atlassian for coming up on 9 years. I've worked on Connect, I've worked on Forge, and now I'm working sort of at the intersection of the two. And you might have caught a talk earlier by Joe and I about how that's shaping up. We'll popcorn over to Jordan.
Hey everyone, my name's Jordan. I'm a product manager working on improving the development loop alongside Dan. So as he mentioned, generally this consists of making improvements to the UI kit, custom UI, and the Forge CLI as well. I'm based in Sydney and I've been working on Forge since it was in beta, so I'm excited to answer all your questions. Popcorn to Aditi.
Hey everyone, my name's Aditi. I'm a product management intern on the Forge team, and I work in particular on observability and app management for Forge. I've been here for about 6 months now, and yeah, back over to you, Bentley.
Yeah, sweet. I'm Bentley. I'm the developer advocate on the developer experience team. And so I think, quick math, 2, 7, 9, I think we're pushing 20 years of experience at Atlassian, which is always fun to count and see how many years, whether they're legal drinking age or not. I want to say thank you to these panelists. All these panelists, they are staying up late for you. So I want a personal thank you to all of them staying up late to answer your questions. And we'll kick it off. The question we keep hearing, and James alluded to this. He gave a talk on it, but it's highly voted. When will Atlassian Connect be deprecated? James, I'll hand it off to you.
Cool. Yeah. So I drew the short for trying to answer this question. So obviously, at every step of the way along the Forge journey, we're trying to share with you as much as we know and sort of what we're thinking. Obviously, I'm not going to give you a sort of exact timeline. I guess it's just to unpack more the question of what do we mean by deprecating. So if you saw the talk that Joe and I gave earlier, I think the thing we're trying to get clear there is we're working really hard to make it really easy to make that first step of moving your Connect app onto Forge pretty much as is. So I took the Hackathon app, made some tweaks to the modules, put them over into a manifest, and the app pretty much worked as is. So we're not asking people to take sort of a huge leap up sort of a cliff and rewrite the whole app. We plan on bringing pretty much all the Connect features you know and love over onto Forge. So if you mean, there'll be something of a superficial change of shifting onto the Forge platform, but that's not saying goodbye to all the Connect features that you've been relying on. In the sort of years to come, perhaps will offer new ways of doing the things that your Connect app does today. For example, we might maybe change some things about like the way that a platform authenticates to your app. Potentially some other things that you might change or might be encouraging is maybe some feature things around how we do UI. For example, thus far with Connect apps, we've had sort of the existing Connect-based, iframe-based Connect solution. We now have custom UI, so we might encourage a move to that, or work on bringing those two together a bit more. How that looks exactly, we don't know ourselves, but yeah, I guess the main message I'd like you to take away is we make it really easy to make that first step of moving your Connect app onto Forge as is.
Yeah, can we unpack that a little bit more? Because I know the program's in alpha right now, and you literally showed us with code how one can go about it. So thinking about kind of the different classes of developers that we have out there, there's maybe some developers that have an idea for an app that they haven't started yet. There are existing Connect apps on the marketplace. There's a mix in between. That alpha, it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, is geared towards people whose apps are currently on Connect that could probably work on Forge, and they seem like, I'm out there, I've got this Connect app, and I'm like, wow, Forge makes a lot of sense. I want to start pushing on the Forge. Is that who should be signing up for the alpha right now?
Yeah, so I think it's for people who have an existing Connect app and they want to experiment with how it might look for them to take that, shift it onto the Forge platform, particularly if they're interested in adopting some of the new Forge features alongside their app, whether that's having a shot at storing some data on Atlassian-hosted storage, or using some UI kit to sort of simplify how the UI works, whether that's to sort of just reduce the total code volume, or think about maybe how could you reduce some infrastructure spend when this becomes available. Obviously, Connect and Forge apps are still in alpha at the moment, so it is just for those who are keen to get started as soon as possible, kicking the tires. We can't offer a production-ready sort of hybrid solution just yet.
Yeah. Backing out to another question that I saw, and this is open for anyone. The question was, I would like to build an app. I have an idea. Should I build it on Connect, or should I build it on Forge? Can we as a group make recommendations on how to begin kind of dissecting that and making that decision, because right now it is a either or choice. How would you recommend going about and making the call to dive into Forge or build on Connect?
Yeah, so I guess go back to the topic of my talk with Joe. We're trying to make it easy to bring Connect apps over into the Forge world. So I think there shouldn't be any concern about starting with Connect today on that basis of being left behind. That said, I think if the features of Forge support what you want to do with your app, Forge seems like an obvious choice, just because the amount of things that platform takes care of for you, and the amount of things you don't have to worry about anymore.
Cool. Okay, so my assumption was the answer is if you can do it on Forge, do it on Forge. Otherwise, roll back and try it on Connect. Cool. The other thing that we've seen questions on today, as well as on the developer community, often is the 10-second timeout for Forge functions. Myself, not being a good developer, have hit this, but there's kind of like a lot to unpack here. So the TLDR or didn't watch is, hey, there's a 10-second invocation limit on Forge functions, and it's easy to hit that. Things time out. We get a lot of questions about, are we looking to extend that, or how are we working around that? So what is our thinking on the current time limits for Forge invocations?
Cool. Yeah, I can take this one. So I think in my mind, this one comes down to two things. I think performance and cost are probably the two that come to mind for me. So the first one with performance, I think the themes that we see coming up when we hear people talking about the 10-second timeout is that API requests are taking longer than 10 seconds. So, calling a product API, and quite often this is via, the request Jira or request Confluence methods from custom UI. And the reason those are bound to the 10 seconds is because at the moment they proxy via the FAS layer. So, when you're calling request Jira, that's going over the FAS layer. It's actually doing a Forge invocation, and then it is returning the content. So one thing that we're doing at the moment, in fact, my team's working on this, is that we're currently removing the need for those client-side requests to proxy via the FAS. So the idea here is that there will be no timeout for those APIs other than the timeouts that are actually on the APIs. And it'll also mean that there'll be less overhead as well. You're not running an invocation for when you're trying to do those requests. And the other one that I touched on as well with cost is we obviously need to ensure that Forge remains viable. So 10 seconds is kind of like our platform limit at the moment. But the reason I think that we haven't increased it so far is that the main concern is that we have, we want user experience to remain a focus, and that we don't want to be slowing down the experiences for users. 10 seconds is a long time for someone to be waiting around. And beyond that sort of time, we can think of other sensible ways to solve these problems. So another thing that we're doing and that we have at the moment, the first thing we have at the moment is scheduled triggers. So this is a way to asynchronously process data and prepare it for the user. There are some limitations with that in terms of the intervals and how often that runs. But another thing that we're looking at the moment to kind of help with this is we're looking at queues and consumers. So we're looking at the ability to trigger an asynchronous task and have that process in the back end. So it won't be longer functions, but it will be, you'll be able to kick off some background process to do something, and then you can kick off more if you need more processing time, and then you will be able to present that information or that result asynchronously to the user. So there's a few sort of different routes that we're going down to solve this problem, and yeah, those are the ones.
Cool. Disappointed I don't get a 60-second timeout to force a user to wait around for a minute. I just want that. When Dan says, "Don't make users wait for 10 seconds." good takeaway that we should all learn from. Another question we've seen a lot of is, will Forge work on X? I think I saw a question about gadgets. Trello was mentioned in the keynote. I saw a question about Bitbucket Cloud. So would someone like to share where we're thinking about extending Forge onto other Atlassian products?
Yeah, I think I might be able to help with that one. Long term, I think really at Atlassian, our long term vision is really that we want to be using Forge for extensibility in all of our products. We've certainly got a lot of teams around Atlassian that I think are pretty excited about trying to incorporate Forge into their products. And we've already started to see some pretty cool prototypes coming out of the works for different teams. Just a few weeks ago, we wrapped up a prototype trying to get Trello working with Forge, and so I'm pretty excited to sort of see that come together. And likewise, there's been a whole bunch of different ones floating around with different teams. So I think over time, definitely, we're going to be looking to add more products to start using Forge and letting you build awesome, cool extensions on top of different products. Basically much the same way you do Jira and Confluence today on top of Forge. So yeah, so Trello is one that we're thinking. We haven't got any definite timelines on that yet, yeah, I think we're pretty excited given sort of the existing ecosystem with Power-Ups and doing some interesting things in that space. Yeah.
Cool. I'm excited for that. Having spent a lot of time in the Trello ecosystem world, nothing gets me more excited than the idea of not having to run web servers just to serve static assets. Yeah, and a lot of opportunity there, which is exciting. One of the questions that we have seen and saw today, and I think it fits very well with Jordan being a PM on the team that you are, which is, hey, Forge is changing all the time. The CLI version is constantly being bumped. How do I stay up to date with what's happening and stay in the know with what's coming? Jordan, what are your recommendations on that front?
Yeah, definitely. So we've pretty much got three main areas where we communicate changes with the community. So first and foremost is the Forge changelog. You can find that on developer.atlassian.com. Probably the easiest way to find that is just through the search bar. And that basically lists all the major and minor changes that we release periodically to do with the entire Forge platform. Another good place to look is the announcements category on community.developer.atlassian.com. So usually when there's a more major release, we'll write up a piece on the announcements category that sort of explains everything, and it's a really good forum for people to ask questions as well. And the final place, we do have a public roadmap that lives on Trello. So the easiest way to find that is just if you Google Atlassian platform for developers roadmap, it generally comes up as the first option. And we're looking at sort of improving that at the moment for sort of the best source of truth for people to see what's coming next with Forge.
Cool. Yeah, I know I spend a lot of time on the Atlassian developer community, doing more than just posting pictures of dogs, but I do try to keep an eye on all of the announcements that are rolling into Forge. It's like nonstop. So we had a question about encrypted storage, and I think that this is the question was: is encrypted Forge storage already implemented? If not, when will it be done? And how big will this storage be, and how secure will it be? Is it suitable for storing PII? And this, I think, kind of is a part of a broader question around Forge storage platforms, and then also secure storage in Forge apps. And so I guess kind of my question to the group is, and I think, Michael, I've heard you talk about this before, what are our recommendations when it comes to storage, and particularly secure storage on Forge right now, and where are we kind of headed with that?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I'll start by saying your stuff that's stored in Forge is definitely encrypted. We do use encryption at rest for everything at Atlassian. So when we talk about not wanting to store secrets in our storage API, it's because we want to make sure we're offering the best tool for the job there. And at present, don't really feel like the current storage as it is would be what we would want to be recommending for using for storing secrets. Now, if you want to store secrets, it really depends on what you want to be storing. If you want to just store like your API credentials to talk to some other API, I'd be recommending environmental variables are the best place to be putting those. For other secrets, we don't really have a great story there today, and that's something we're pretty aware of, and we do hear a bit. I'm hoping in the future it's something we'll get a chance to look at so that we can offer something good there. I would probably say bank credit card numbers and accounts, that's pretty scary. Probably pick a payment provider for doing those rather than like Atlassian, but that's just just my personal preference there. You also asked a big question about like our storage, how big. There's a whole, if you're interested in our platform limits, because we have got a whole bunch of limits in place just to make sure, the platform's being used right and we're not going to get people scaling out of control. We've got some good documentation on that. For storage off memory, we have a minimum quota, I think it's about 100 megabytes, and then we scale up based on the number of users in the site is the intent there. So the idea should be bigger sites get a bigger allocation.
Cool. Yeah, and I think that limits, talking about limits, and there's on our documentation page, there's a big page with tons of tables that have all the limits, time, invocation, call, everything you could ever want under the sun. And so one of the questions we get around those limits, and we've made announcements on the developer community that Forge will be free until 2024, and that kind of dovetailed with those limits. And so the question that we've had is, what will happen after 24? Exactly, like, will there be any cost for the app vendors? How, like, what are we thinking about for limits? Yeah, what are our plans with limits and cost?
That's an interesting question. Was that directed at anyone? Or?
No, sorry, no, I know there've been a few people that have chimed in on it, but I wanted to see if someone wanted to share their thinking along those lines.
I can help you answer that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, sort of on pricing past 2024, obviously that's pretty hard to forecast based on, we don't know how much usage we're going to get, things like that. Our predominant intention is to keep Forge cost effective for developers, obviously. So certainly it would be cheaper than for developers to host it themselves, on top of the other benefits that you get from hosting it on the Atlassian cloud. So yeah, just on that, sort of, we're not really sure the exact costs 2024 onwards, but we should be able to provide everyone with an update when we see sort of some more reliable numbers on usage and things like that, so we can forecast.
Cool. One of the questions I see and hear often too are kind of around things that we've around observability and how we're thinking about. We just announced marketplace apps. Forge apps are on marketplace. It's huge news. That's super exciting, and you heard from some of the app vendors who launched with us that built early on. So in terms of if I'm building an app for production, I want to distribute on the marketplace, there's some things I care about. In particular, like, how do I get my app to beta users? Maybe you are out there watching and you've built something and you're like, hey, I want to share this with some people that aren't just on my team. Aditi, I think this is something that you're familiar with and your team's been working on. So can you kind of provide some guidance on app distribution?
Yeah, of course. So one of the things we've recently implemented is direct app distribution. This can be done via the developer console, which is also at developer.atlassian.com. Once you go into there and go into your app, you can generate an installation link. This link can then be shared with your customers for testing or internal purposes, and you can go from there for your beta testing. If you do want to find out more about it, there is a great bit of documentation on Forge Docs, which is also at developer.atlassian.com, and I believe it's titled Distribute Your App. So that's the page you'd be looking for.
Cool. Always important to test with more than just yourself. Share your app early and often with folks. So we got a lot of questions. Are you considering extension points to automation for Jira? I think that this lands with you, Michael, and kind of you covered this a little bit, but can you speak at all to where we're thinking on automation for Jira?
Yeah, so I mean, we've been definitely been working with the automation for Jira team. Yeah, I think I can't give anything concrete there, but we've certainly been working and prototyping with them to see what we can do. I mean, if you think about it, it's a pretty good fit, I think, for the Forge platform, being able to build, small functions and plug them into an automation workflow. So I think I'm definitely excited about the ideas that we could unlock there. Yeah, so I think we're definitely pretty excited about what we could do with automation.
Cool. And James, I got to come back to you just to make sure that we do our due diligence here. There are two questions I think line up with you and your talk, and they are. I like this one. We just released our app using Connect after 1 year of development. When we started, Forge was not mature. What should we do now? I feel we may have limitations with Connect and new functionalities. So that's part one. So yeah, what is your recommendation to someone that is in this position?
Just in a position, yeah. I mean, if you sort of do a straight up comparison of the features that both have, I think you'll still see that Connect is very feature rich, and in some ways, because you have to do more of the work yourself, there are some ways that it's sort of freer and less constrained. So if it's already released, that means you've done the hard work of getting it hosted and getting it out there, and I think you still have like a long history of feature development to benefit from. And there are still things we're doing on the Connect space, for example, making sure you can support things like data residency and those kind of features that certain enterprise customers with very stringent data and security requirements have. And so, I don't think you should feel like you're missing out. And I think there's like a lot, like there's a really rich sort of suite of tools and features, I think, that can support a whole lot of use cases. And so, I think there should be plenty to keep you busy until we're ready to offer, true production hybrid apps. So I wouldn't worry.
Is part of that work as well? The eventual plan is for me to take my Connect app that maybe currently is on the marketplace and switch it in that marketplace listing into a Forge app. Like that is kind of like one of the long-term outcomes that we're hoping for with the work that you're a part of.
Yeah, I think in the talk we talked about sort of two paths. So if you're confident that Forge has everything you need, then you can do sort of a straight direct rewrite into Forge. Now, as of today, that would be a new marketplace listing and a new installation. We're sort of prototyping and working through how we can ensure you preserve your existing installations and listing at the moment. So we're still ironing out the details of that. Or the other path is bring your app onto the Forge platform as is, or mostly as is, and then incrementally adopt, possibly with a view to going full Forge in time as more capabilities become available, or perhaps remaining in sort of a hybrid arrangement. And there are some worked sort of examples of what that might look like for different kinds of apps, again, in the presentation.
Cool. So if you haven't seen it, definitely go watch that presentation. A lot of good stuff covered there. Let's see. Looking at other questions, there's one that I missed that I want to make sure I got back to. This is an interesting one, and this one's kind of at large. I think this is probably a collective input, but maybe Dan, you might be able to speak to this. I'm not sure. Are there best practices on how to test Forge apps? E.g. possibilities of mocking the storage API, etc. I know that in your in the keynote we talked a little bit about Shipits and how we use Forge. We've seen more and more Forge apps be used for that. I wonder if we have any collective best practices that we've discovered along the way as we're playing around building things on Forge.
Yeah, so it's a good question. So I think that there's kind of a few things here. Like the complexity with testing at the moment, I think, is that Forge code runs in its own runtime. So it's JavaScript, but it's not strictly Node. It's not strictly something else. So the environment is not it's not exactly something that's super standard. So when we're talking about running testing frameworks, you could create unit tests and you could run it on your local machine, but it's not necessarily a true reflection of Forge runtime. So I think one of the sort of the goals that we've been talking about in my team is that we'd love to expose a way for tests to be run in the execution environment that they will be running. We've had a few goes at doing this. We've spiked it out a few times. We've had some innovation projects to try and tackle it. we do have some solutions that look pretty promising, but I think the ideal state is that we can get to a point where we can support the major open source frameworks for testing. I think that's really where we'd like to go with it. The current state of the runtime is that we still have to do some work there to make that supported. It's something that probably is I wouldn't say it's too far away, but it's not something that's kind of on our immediate agenda. We're kind of relying on developers kind of treating their own path on that one at the moment.
Yeah. I guess that'd kind of be my question, and I should ask this in the developer community, and maybe we can have some sort of talk on it. I'm curious to hear from those developers that have apps, whether they're in the marketplace already or they're just built for internal instances, but they're production level or production supported Forge apps. I would love to hear best practices from those folks. I always say like the best app builders are the ones actually building apps, not always Atlassians. And so great question. We should ask that out loud in the developer community. How are you testing your Forge apps? But that brings up, I think, a nice segue into talking again about production support and kind of making that jump from, hey, I'm just playing around, dilly-dallying, and I made this little thing for my local test Forge, my local instance, and now I'm ready to ship it somewhere else. I think there's really great support, and we've done a lot of good talks on using Forge Tunnel and using the CLI to run local instances and your dev instance of your Forge app, and you get really nice clean output, and it's real quick feedback loop. But the game totally changes when you ship an app to production and you've got in the marketplace, and like you got users and you got support requests coming in, and I know it's really important that you have eyes and hands, on kind of able to dig into what's happening on production. What sort of production? I know in particular, like production logs is something that we shipped recently. I think Aditi, this was your team. Can you talk about how we think about supporting apps in production?
Yeah, sure. So you've encountered an issue or you have a support request that's come through. You need access to production logs. What we have done is created a flow so that you can work with your customer to get access to these logs. They can do this by going to Admin Hub and then to the Connected Apps page. In this page, admins can get access to their logs, so they can preview it, filter it by date, and then also download a log file. Once they've done this, admins can then send this to you so that you have access to the logs for production sites. We understand that you also need more continuous access and also the ability to filter and do it across multiple environments. So we are actually actively working on enhancing the ability in the developer console so that you'll be able to work with logs a little bit better there as well. And then again, of course, if you do need more information about this, it is available in our Forge docs under Access Production Logs.
Cool. And I think last time I looked, I think we actually have like a little, there's production access logs, and there's like a header that's like next steps. So it seems like that's the place if you're looking for going from doing something locally and having fun to the big leagues. I think all of those articles are probably worth reading through, guides and best practices. So other questions that we've had, and I want to say just in general, we've had a lot of questions. We've had a lot of very specific questions. And so if we don't get to your question, I'd invite you to ask it out loud in the developer community. We have tons of Atlassians in there. Beyond the great panel that we have here, there are tons of Atlassians that are eager to answer questions. And so if we don't get to your question specifically, ask it out loud. And I'll also be making a post with some of these questions and some of our answers that I'll post. So if you want to follow up there, I definitely recommend keeping an eye out for that. But this is one of those that I don't know that we necessarily have like a specific answer to, but I'll ask it out loud and see if anyone immediately raises their hand. And if not, I'll say, well, we'll answer that later. So there are JOT secured REST endpoints like get user email endpoint. Is this one already available via Forge? If not, when will it be accessible from Forge? So can anyone speak to that?
I can't address it directly. Sadly, I don't think we have anyone on the panel who's from a specific team that's looking at API coverage and achieving parity. But I think I can confidently say there is sort of work ongoing. So yes, there are differences in the coverage between the JOT auth and the OAuth 2 auth today. The one that comes to mind is the Jira Software APIs. Last I checked, so when I say OAuth 2 auth, that's like the kind of auth that you're using when you do request as Jira or as Confluence, so your Forge authentication. Yes, the one that comes to mind is Jira for Software, and I think there's also some other specific APIs, like perhaps the Get Email one. So I couldn't say 100% certainty that all of those APIs will eventually be covered, but certainly there's active work ongoing to close the gap.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, our recommendation seems to be, I feel like I saw, maybe Michael, you said this is try 3LO first and see if that covers your bases, and then go from there. Am I misinterpreting a comment?
Oh, so that was, I think, with respect to the act as user. So we don't currently have the act as user scope available in Forge today. And it's definitely, don't have support for that. I think we do have support for user impersonation, but it's via the slightly more standard, or like the refresh token flow in OAuth 2. So if that works for you, give it a go. I mean, it's built into Forge apps, so definitely encourage you to give that a go if you're looking to impersonate a user.
Cool. All right, so that's me punching above my my depth of knowledge. So this is one, coming back to search, how to perform search in Storage API. And this is, I think, a general question. I don't know that we have anyone specifically here that has worked on storage. If we do, this one's for you. For example, I have a saved list of users in Forge Surge. Each user is an individual object, key value pair in storage. How can I search by their name? I know that we have a pretty robust, or not robust, but we have a lengthy document on storage and how we recommend doing querying. But can anyone speak to kind of the high level recommendation there?
I can probably help with that. So I was on the team that worked on the original storage APIs. So at the moment, querying is pretty limited in the storage API, and we're kind of aware that there's a whole bunch of like missing capabilities. Definitely, if you run into things you can't do, let us know. We want to know because it'll help inform how we develop the storage API. For this particular one, doing queries, so we don't really have like arbitrary sort of like indexing or anything like that in our storage APIs. What we do have today is the ability to get a range of entities by their identifier. That's one option that you've got. You can just basically build up what we call lexicographically sorted, which means they're sorted alphabetically. So you can build up a key, and then you can basically do a range sort on that. Now that's not going to work for a lot of your searches. It's pretty limited, but definitely give that a go if you can. Otherwise, let us know if you're running into those sorts of cases, I think probably. Dan, did you have any thoughts on that? I know you've worked a bit with some of those APIs.
No, I think you've covered it off. Yeah.
Cool. Another question that I saw, let's see, it was about a very specific, is the layout basic prop we saw in Jira Pages available in Confluence Space Pages too? And I think that this question was asked specifically about Mihaw's what's new in Forge talk, and I had a chance to ask him because he was able to speak to it, and he said that right now the Confluence approach, Confluence has a different approach to full page extensions, and it's something that they're working on unifying. So I think the answer to the question specifically is no. But they're trying to figure out how do we make that available across those. So it's a very specific question. let's see, what else do we have? Fortunately, we can't answer where I got this fresh shirt, or where I cannot tell you where you can get a shirt as fresh as mine. I've been told that that's a trade secret. Let's see, is there anything else? Is body macro support coming to Forge in the future? This feels like one that we should say that we can follow up on an answer to, unless someone has an answer specifically to that. Silence. So I'm guessing that that's one that we should follow up on. I'm not super familiar with it, so
I think, Bentley, there is some very early investigations into this, but there's nothing concrete.
Okay, cool. Oh, one question I saw was about data egress, and I know that there was an announcement about that, and it seems, seeing a pattern here of we continuing to do things that bolster customer trust and security, and Zach definitely talked about this in his presentation. But can anyone speak to, from a high level, what is data egress and why should I care about it as a Forge developer?
Yeah, I can probably speak to that. So my team worked on data egress. It's been an ongoing initiative for quite some time now. So when we initially launched custom UI, I'm sure many of the developers would remember that we started off with very strict content security policies, and there's a lot that you weren't able to do, and that was intentional for the most part. To start with, we an important story that we tell around Forge, particularly to our customers, is the aspects of trust and how we're trying to build a platform that has this shared trust between external developers, the Atlassian internal developers, and our customers ourselves. So we've built data egress to make it more transparent to both users and administrators what apps are doing with data. So we're surfacing where apps are capable of talking to on the internet. So if an app is able to talk about or talk to some external web service, we're surfacing that to users so that they can make an informed decision when they consent. And by doing that as well, we're informing them of what's happening, and we're increasing that level of trust. So I think the latest milestone that just got released will be the consent changes. So it's now going to be surfaced on the consent screen. And I believe that enforcement for the FAS fetch calls is going to be coming. So the intention long term is that our expectation is that domains will be declared in the Forge app manifests, and we're going to be continuing to try and tighten that and to bring more controls into Forge in the future. Yeah.
Cool. I actually, there's a kind of a follow-on question, and I think this is one that we will want to answer in the community, but I remember seeing a question specifically about CSP, kind of in the same vein, right? We have CSPs and you can step up the level of access that you can request. And there's a question of, are we planning to add support for more specifically video or camera and probably, I think, microphone access? And my guess is the answer is yes. We're considering that, and we'd love to hear from you what you want and why you want it. That helps us better kind of make the case for prioritizing it. So yeah, that was one I want to make sure. I was like, oh, I haven't answered that. So yeah, cool.
One thing I'll just add to that as well, we've had some examples of very similar asks in the last few months. One was allowing downloads from iframes. We've had a few of those other sort of requests that our team's kind of taken them in, and we've just been like, oh yep, that makes sense, and we've pumped it out. So it's definitely one of those things that we really want to hear from the community. If there are specific asks like that and you have a solid use case, we'd love to hear about it, because we'd be more than happy to try and accommodate it.
Cool. Well, I want to be cognizant of all of your time, both viewers watching and as well as this panelists. Like I said, they're burning the late night hours right now. So thank you for all the questions. Thank you all for taking the time to answer these. Good seeing all your faces, and I think I can say without any doubt that we will see all of you, the panelists, around in the developer community. I know I've seen every single one of your avatars at some point, even though we've not met in real life. I know exactly who you are, your avatar. So thank you to all of you for being a part of this. And with that, I think that we are wrapping it up. This is the end of Developer Day 2021. I want to thank you, all of our viewers, for joining in and for listening to the presentations that we prepared, and for all of the speakers for doing the hard work of preparing a presentation and dealing with me being like, hey, we got to practice this. But I think it was all worth it. And if you missed any of the talks, they will be available on demand via the platform that you're currently on, this website, through the end of June. So if you missed something, no worries, you can go back and catch up to it. If you missed the URL or something, they're still there, they're still available. If you have more questions, definitely join us in conversation on the Atlassian developer community. If you don't know what that is, it's community.developer.atlassian.com. It's where we Atlassians hang out and engage with developers. We love hearing from you. We love having your questions. We announce other events. So please do come and hang out with us. Like we're here for you, and we want to make sure that you're successful building on our platforms. And so the other thing that I'm really excited about is a little sneak peek of things to come. It's time for Codegeist. Codegeist is coming this summer or winter, depending on which hemisphere you're in. We've got tons of prizes lined up, tons of interesting ideas. And so if you have an idea for something that you want to build, definitely come and build it, whether it's Connect, whether it's Forge. We want you to be a part of Codegeist. If you're not familiar with Codegeist, do a quick Google, Atlassian Codegeist, CODEGEIST. Always spelling catches me. And you'll be able to see more about previous Codegeists and get a sense for what the upcoming Codegeist will entail. And so with that, wherever you're watching from, please take care of yourself. Hang tough. We hope to see you soon. And until next time, appreciate you being here.